The Siege of Louisbourg was a pivotal battle of the 7 Years' War in 1758 that ended the French colonial era in Atlantic Canada and led directly to the loss of Quebec in 1759 and the remainder of French North America the following year. Background: Lawrence River for an attack on Quebec unmolested. After an expedition against Louisbourg in 1757 led by Lord Loudon was turned back due to a strong French naval deployment, the British under the leadership of William Pitt resolved to try again with new commanders. Pitt assigned the duty of capturing the fortress to Major General Geoffrey Amherst. The chief engineer was John Henry Bastion, who had been present at the first siege of Louisbourg in 1745 and was chief engineer at Fort St. Philip, Minorca, in 1756 when the British had surrendered the fort and the island to the French after a long siege. As they had in 1757, the French planned to defend Louisbourg by a large naval build-up. However, the French fleet sailing from Toulon was blockaded in Cartagena by a British force, and a relief force was defeated at the Battle of Cartagena. After this, the French abandoned their attempt to reinforce Louisbourg from the Mediterranean, meaning there would be few ships available to actively oppose the British off Louisbourg. Order of battle: British forces assembled at Halifax, Nova Scotia, where Army and Navy units spent most of May training together as the massive invasion fleet came together. After a large gathering at the Great Pontac, on the 29th of May the Royal Navy fleet departed from Halifax for Louisbourg. The fleet consisted of 150 transport ships and 40 men of war. Housed in these ships were almost 14,000 soldiers, almost all of whom were regulars. The force was divided into 3 divisions: Red, commanded by James Wolfe; Blue, commanded by Charles Lawrence; and White, commanded by Edward Whitmore. On the 2nd of June the British force anchored in Gabarus Bay, 3 miles from Louisbourg. The French commander Chevalier de Drucker had at his disposal some 3,500 regulars as well as approximately 3,500 marines and sailors from the French warships in the harbour. However, unlike the previous year, the French Navy was unable to assemble in significant numbers, leaving the French squadron at Louisbourg outnumbered 5-1 by the British fleet. Drucker ordered trenches to be prepared and manned by some 2,000 French troops, along with other defences, such as an artillery battery, at Kennington Cove. Siege. Weather conditions in the first week of June made any landing impossible, and the British were only able to mount a bombardment of the improvised shore defences of Gabarus Bay from a frigate. However, conditions improved, and at daybreak on the 8th of June Amherst launched his assault using a flotilla of large boats, organized in 7 divisions, each commanded by one of his brigadiers. French defenses were initially successful and after heavy losses, Wolfe ordered a retreat. However, at the last minute, a boatload of light infantry in Wolfe's division found a rocky inlet protected from French fire and secured a beachhead. Wolfe redirected the rest of his division to follow. Outflanked, the French retreated rapidly back to their fortress. Continuing heavy seas and the difficulty inherent to moving siege equipment over boggy terrain delayed the commencement of the formal siege. In the meantime, Wolfe was sent with 1,220 picked men around the harbour to seize Lighthouse Point, which dominated the harbour entrance. This he did on the 12th of June. After 11 days, on the 19th of June, the British artillery batteries were in position, and the orders were given to open fire on the French. The British battery consisted of 70 cannons and mortars of all sizes. Within hours, the guns had destroyed walls and damaged several buildings. On the 21st of July a mortar round from a British gun on Lighthouse Point struck a 74-gun French ship of the line, L'Entreprenant, and set it ablaze. A stiff breeze fanned the fire, and shortly after the L'Entreprenant caught fire, 2 other French ships had caught fire. L'Entreprenant exploded later in the day, depriving the French of the largest ship in the Louisbourg fleet. The next major blow to French morale came on the evening of the 23rd of July, at 1000. A British hotshot set the King's Bastion on fire. The King's Bastion was the fortress headquarters and the largest building in North America in 1758. Its destruction eroded confidence and reduced morale in the French troops and their hopes to lift the British siege. Most historians regard the British actions of the 25th of July as the straw that broke the camel's back. Using a thick fog as cover, Admiral Boscawen sent a cutting-out party to destroy the French ships in the harbour. The British raiders eliminated the last two French ships of the line, capturing the Bienfaisant and burning the Prudent, thus clearing the way for the Royal Navy to enter the harbour. James Cook, who later became famous as an explorer, took part in this operation and recorded it in his ship's logbook. Capitulation. On the 26th of July the French surrendered. Having fought a spirited defense, the French expected to be granted honours of war, as given to the surrendering British at the Battle of Minorca. However, Amherst refused. Tales of the atrocities supposedly committed by France's native allies at the surrender of Fort Oswego and Fort William Henry probably fresh in his mind. The defenders of Louisbourg were ordered to surrender all of their arms, equipment and flags. These actions outraged Drucker, but because the safety of the non-combatant inhabitants of Louisbourg depended upon him, he reluctantly accepted the terms of surrender. The Camby's regiment refused to honor the terms of surrender, breaking their muskets and burning their regimental flags rather than hand them over to the British victors. Brigadier General Whitmore was appointed the new governor of Louisbourg, and remained there with 4 regiments. Aftermath. Louisbourg had held out long enough to prevent an attack on Quebec in 1758. However, the fall of the fortress led to the loss of French territory across Atlantic Canada. From Louisbourg, British forces spent the remainder of the year routing French forces and occupying French settlements in what is today New Brunswick, Prince Edward Island and Newfoundland. The second wave of the Acadian expulsion began. The British engaged in the St. John River Campaign, the Cape Sable Campaign, the Petite Kodiak River Campaign, the Isle St. John Campaign, and the removal of Acadians in the Gulf of St. Lawrence Campaign. The loss of Louisbourg deprived Quebec and New France of naval protection, opening the St. Lawrence to attack. Louisbourg was used in 1759 as the staging point for General Wolfe's famous siege of Quebec, ending French rule in North America. Following the surrender of Quebec, British forces and engineers set about methodically destroying the fortress with explosives, ensuring that it could not return to French possession a second time in any eventual peace treaty. By 1760, the entire fortress was reduced to mounds of rubble. In 1763, the Treaty of Paris saw France formally cede Canada, including Cape Breton Island, to the British. In 1768, the last of the British garrison departed along with most of the remaining civilian inhabitants. Royal Navy fleet throughout the siege. French fleet throughout the siege. Artifacts Gallery. English propaganda against Louisbourg and French Canada in 1755. Edward Boscawen Medal. The fortress today, as seen from the harbour. Cannon from La Prudente, currently at the Battlefields Park, Quebec City. French mortar used during the siege, displayed at the Canadian War Museum, Ottawa. Louisbourg cannons. Toronto. Map of Louisbourg. Bibliography. Anderson, Fred. Crucible of War pp 250–256. Brumwell, Stephen. Paths of Glory. The Life and Death of General James Wolfe. Hambledon Continuum. 2007 ISBN 9781847252081. Chartrand, René Louisbourg 1758. Huff, Richard. Captain James Cook. A Biography. Hodder and Stoughton, 1995. Fowler, William M. Empires at War. The French and Indian War and the Struggle for North America. Vancouver. Douglas and McIntyre Limited, 2005. Hitzman, McKay and CCJ. Bond. The Assault Landing at Louisbourg, 1758. Canadian Historical Review 35-314-330. A.J.B. Johnson. Endgame 1758. The Promise, the Glory and the Despair of Louisbourg's Last Decade. Sydney, N.S. Capra Breton University Press, 2008. McLennan, J.S. Louisbourg. From its foundation to its fall, 1713 to 1758. Halifax. The Bookroom Limited. Warner, Oliver. With Wolfe to Quebec. Toronto. William Collins Sons and Company Limited, 1972. ISBN 00021199420. The Nayville Chronicle 07. Bunny and Gold.